has put it, take the oil.
I'm not going to talk about what we may or may not do. I think the president's been very clear that he doesn't telegraph forward what taking options off the table. That's not a good negotiating skill. That's not how he works. There's a reason he's been successful at negotiating, is because he does it in a way that doesn't telegraph to people what he's going to take on or off the table.
With us now, former CIA Director and former Defense Secretary Robert Gates. His book, A Passion for Leadership, is now out in paper book back. Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for being here. It's obviously too early to assess this president. That was quite a disturbing Saturday, which seemed to smooth out a little bit. But what is your take, first of all, on Donald Trump's cabinet picks for foreign policy, and then we'll get to the specifics.
I think that his picks for the national security team are really quite strong. Mattis at Defense and John Kelly at Homeland Security both worked for me, and I have the highest regard for them. I think.
Tell me about Mattis. Will General Mattis be the sort of person that will speak truth to power to Donald
Absolutely.
Trump? If he says, hey, let's go into Iraq and seize oil, what would General Mattis say?
I don't think Jim Mattis has any problem speaking straight from the shoulder to anybody about anything. And I also think that obviously that Rex Tillerson is a great nominee for Secretary of State. Frankly, I was disappointed that he was voted out of committee on a strict party line vote. That's not been the tradition in the Foreign Relations Committee for secretaries, and I think he's eminently qualified, and I think will be a very good secretary.
There's a Russian concern
the one thing that I like about all three of these guys, and I will say Mike Pompeo, who I don't know as well but have talked to on several occasions, is they're all strong, independent-minded people who will tell the president exactly what they think.
Yeah.
What about on Tillerson? There was some concern about his relationship with Vladimir Putin. Can you provide any insights there?
Well, I introduced him. I was one of the introducers at his hearing in the Foreign Relations Committee, and I addressed this directly. And I think that because he was a successful businessman in negotiating with the Russians, who better to negotiate with Vladimir Putin and the Russians than somebody who actually knows who they are, knows how they negotiate, knows how they do business. And I think that, as I said at the time, I think Rex Tillerson's only goal is going to be to do what's in the best interest of the United States.
And in all your conversations with him, do you believe he understands that Vladimir Putin has been adversarial towards the United States' best interest for the past decade?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Mr. Secretary, throughout your splendid career, and it has been a splendid career, you've always been measured in the way you framed things publicly for the media. When you hear Donald Trump, President Trump, say keep the oil, and passing reference of in Langley on Saturday, and linking keeping the oil to perhaps this would have prevented the creation of ISIS, what would you advise the President of the United States, or would you advise the President of the United States that words matter when they come from a president?
Well, I think that there's sort of parallel universes here. There is, for the administration, there is the sort of public piece that includes the tweets and things said to the press and so on and so forth, and that sometimes can be pretty jarring. And then there is the serious policy-making side, and the Donald Trump that people see in private meetings, who's thoughtful and considered and takes things and listens to people, seeks out other people's points of view, and then makes decisions. And I think the thing we're going to have to pay closest attention to is actually what he does, as opposed, we can't be, as he gets distracted by criticism, we can't be distracted too much by some of the things that are said publicly. But by the same token, the administration needs to understand that that first universe of public commentary does have impact on the second.
But you found him to be, you said, behind closed doors. You found him to be thoughtful and...
Yeah, we had a very serious, thoughtful conversation. And I might add, given the quote that you led with, he was very gracious to me. He said, you know, you were pretty rough on me. And I said, well, there were a lot of things said about national security in the campaign that caused me a lot of trouble. But now you're elected, it's important that you be successful in national security, and I'll do everything I can to help you be successful.
In addition to defense, you also, of course, ran the CIA. I'm curious to hear what you think about the relationship between Donald Trump and the intel agencies, given everything we've heard Donald Trump say about intel lately, given that speech that he made in front of the wall on Saturday. Former Director Brennan came out and said he was appalled by that. What is the practical, beside the big flashy headlines and the feuding in public, what's the practical implication of the intel agencies having this sort of war, if you will, with the President of the United States?
Well, the first thing is to have a little historical perspective, and the relationship between presidents and CIA has often been awkward in the past. And several CIA directors have been fired by presidents. So I think that it's really Mike Pompeo's challenge to figure out how to convince the president that CIA is an important asset for him, and for Pompeo to figure out how the agency can best support Trump in the way that is congenial to the way he makes decisions. Every president deals with intelligence briefings and with the intelligence community in a different way. And some have taken personal briefings. When President Carter was in office, he never saw a CIA briefing. Spig Brzezinski, the national security advisor, took the president's daily brief into him every day.
He kind of sucked up all the oxygen in the room, didn't he? Yeah, he kind of, come on. We can tell the truth. He was not sort of the guy, the honest broker in between everybody. He was
always Mr. Nice Guy.
He's so
I think that the challenge for Pompeo is to get this relationship in a place where the president actually takes advantage of this huge asset that is CIA.
Now that TPP, at least our participation in TPP, has been downgraded, perhaps excluded, what does Secretary of State Tillerson tell Prime Minister Abe of Japan?
Well, I think that the United States is going to have to, I think the administration is going to have to come up with some initiatives to reach out to Asian countries to try and establish, if not a multilateral relationship, a bilateral relationship economically and so on. The disappearance of TPP creates a vacuum, and the Chinese are going to fill that vacuum in Asia unless we come up with some ideas on how to replace it with something that may be bilateral, but that demonstrates we are still out there, we're still engaged, and it's still very important. The area is very important to us economically.
So your book, A Passion for Leadership, is out now in paperback. What do you think the most important message is for President Trump, now President Trump, in terms of what you've learned about what leadership takes?
So the book, I finished the book 18 months ago. And the whole first chapter is about the need for disruptive change in government and big institutions, and how frustrated and angry Americans are at just the everyday bureaucratic hassles that they encounter. Everything from getting a driver's license to remodeling their house to their income taxes and so on. And the message in the book is that you can change and reform government, and the book is basically about how you do that. I say how I did it at CIA, at Texas A&M, at the Defense Department. My style is clearly very different than the president's, but I wasn't elected president. But I think one of the messages in there is make the people in these institutions your allies in change, because then they will want to carry it on once you're gone.
So it's interesting, you talk about in the first chapter of this book why bureaucracies fail us in duty. You talked about how bureaucrats sometimes would keep you busy all day to stop you from making the change. And you could see your calendar filling up. And the more it filled up, the more suspicious you got that maybe they didn't want you to go in and cause disruption. So what's your warning to incoming cabinet leaders? How do they stay a step ahead of that?
One of the things I tried to do in each of the institutions I led was, the institution tries to manage you through your inbox and through meetings. And what I tried to do was, in each place, block out an hour to an hour and a half a day and say, that's my time to pursue my agenda to make sure I'm moving this institution forward. The rest of the time, you're controlling me. This is my time. Leave me alone. And because I want to think about whether to fire you or not.
I love it. Robert Gates, former defense
Really
secretary.
quick, one bit of, we got to go, but one bit of advice you have for Mike Pompeo, who probably has the most difficult job in Washington.
Get to know the folks at the agency. They are terrific professionals. They are apolitical. They want to do their best to support the president and this country.
Okay.
And you just can't wait to get back to Washington, can you?
The state of Washington.
Seattle, Washington.
State of Washington.
The real Washington.
I told him it's going to be pretty good until North Korea can leave.
Former
We're
Defense
gonna have to work
Secretary
on
Robert
that.
Gates. Thank you once again.
What a
for
great
the
honor.
show.
It's always a great honor
Such
to
an
have you here,
Pleasure
sir.
to be here always.
Still ahead.